Tony Benn once said, Britain today is suffering from galloping obsolescence.
Hello and welcome to the show. Colourful conversations with clergyman Pete and businessman Mark. This week we ask the question, what is the future of Britain? Now, Theresa May has stated that the Commons vote on her Brexit deal will definitely go ahead. And in her efforts to double all support, this is a crucial point in Britain's future. Now, she has mentioned that if the Commons decides not to support her deal, Britain will be an uncharted territory. Well, that's all very well about the Brexit deal, but what about the long term? What about our culture? What about our values? What about our borders? Where is Britain going today, tomorrow? We need to know the answers. And here's just a little thought. Royal Britannia, sailing on the seas of uncertainty. The British are queer and quintessentially quirky, chewing chips and supping bland teas. A peculiar place where once people were perky and queuing came with ease. But Rule Britannia sails on waves that are jerky, especially in choppy channels overseas, and now their outlook is quite bleak and murky, which is another British disease. Yes, Clergyman Pete, I must ask that it seems that Britain's future seems somewhat murky. Can you clear the way and give us some idea as to what we should be doing as a nation and what we really stand for?
Well, what do we stand for as a nation? I mean, what I would like to start with is by saying that Britain has long been a Christian nation. In fact, as it was forming, it became a Christian nation early on in the history of Christianity. And so I think my first answer to that to you is leaving the EU, setting out on our own in trade deals, reclaiming some of the way that we create laws, to create them ourselves rather than 75% of them being sent down from Brussels as directives, means we can start to build Christian Britain again. And the reason that that's good is it's long been known that the most successful economies based on capitalism, which in turn was based on biblical principles. You see, capitalism only works if you have a moral population and moral trading going on, trustworthy trading. Then you have a free market, but you need that to be within a structure where people trust each other. And so the British system of law, where you're basically free unless there's a law forbidding something, what's often called case law, that the laws are decided when there is a problem, and when there hasn't been a problem, there's freedom. That sort of system is going to enable Britain to break free from the stultifying over-regulation that has been the case as part of the EU, and have a Christian Britain, so build up the moral basis for the country again, and trade free. And history has shown you, I mean, without boringly going through lots of historical examples, when you have a free market, free trade, as free as possible, people get richer. So I think the future for Britain, if it goes the moral Christian route and goes for free trade, is pretty prosperous long term.
Well, that's important, because I know that that's the mantra of Mark and Pete. We want, obviously, long-termism, so that we have something to plan towards, but we want localism. And I'll take that first of all on the point of owning our own destiny, owning our own laws, etc., and being able to control the way we go forward. I think, to your point, we don't want to go too much into history, but I come back to the thing about, what are we as a nation? Are we a strong manufacturer that we once were and dominated industry? Are we a nation that can bring new ideas and entrepreneurialism? We have still today, ironically, we have some excellent engineers that are innovating in such a way that it's changing not only our own society but adds value to the rest of the world. But I think that there are many people who are sort of trying to understand what we represent And that's the thing which is a bit unclear to many people. There have been a lot of concerns, as we know, and we've seen even going into 2019, the concerns over migrants coming into the nation, watering down the values, putting more burden onto our Home Secretary, who seems to be perhaps floundering a little bit in terms of where we really are with this policy. Maybe the Brexit deal, if it ever gets through, and we actually do come out with some clear waters, because we don't want to be in uncharted waters. We want a clear vision about where we're going. But I don't see that. I mean, all we've ever seen from people like Theresa May and her cronies is it's all around the Brexit deal, which I know is important. But what is it that we're actually doing a deal for? So come the deal, whether we do have a deal or no deal, where are we going as a nation? What happened to those great leaders who used to sort of pave the way and say, this is what we are as a nation? We just don't seem to have those visionaries.
No, yes, Margaret Thatcher famously said, "What Britain needs is an Iron Lady." I remember saying that, hence it became a nickname for her. But and maybe we need that, but I don't see that Theresa May, the current Prime Minister, is that person. She seems to have given way at every turn to the EU in negotiating the exit. Yes, the straw lady, maybe. But so I think we can answer this as Mark Abita in the two main aspects that we're experts in. So clergymen and businessmen. I mean, from looking at it from a moral and religious standpoint, I would say, what does Britain stand for? You say, what is the vision for the future? Well, I started off saying we need to have a revival, a sort of return to have a real moral centre for the country. And it hasn't been lost altogether. That's certainly not true, but it's been eroded away, partly due to this way of, this alien way of producing laws, the legal system, and not just the legal system, the legislature in EU. The differential being, the legal system is how you test or enforce the law. The legislature is making the law. So that's why I said both. But both are different in Britain than the EU, and it's strange because Europe was a Christian country, but full of Christian countries, but they haven't been for years. France has been atheistic, of course, a large proportion of its population being Muslim for many years, and so we've seen a turning away far more in Britain than Britain in Christianity, but from Christianity than in Britain. But the thing is that Britain was, in the way it was set up, was informed by its Christianity and retained that even to the present day to a certain extent. So a return back to that is possible as long as the Church of England, the establishment church, gets some backbone, and the newer churches manage to, I suppose, escape from the sort of religious club mentality, just trying to get people to join and sign up individuals, and start to actually use the people to get to have some sort of clout to say this is how we should do things. And so, if you had a religious grouping of different churches and maybe the Jews as well coming together and say we need to have a certain these certain things in place, laws in place, moral laws, change the morality. Certainly the idea of integrity in business deals is extremely important, that they could be rigorously enforced. But not just that, you need a cultural change as well. And really, churches are getting behind making a cultural difference in the arts, in entertainment, as well as in, as I was saying, in politics and the legislature. Then, over the years, I'm talking about long term, we can have Britain being able to be a force in the world again. But I think that's the background within which you can forge ahead in business. So that's what I'm saying. That's what we need to stand for: integrity, a Christian nation with, tolerance of other religions, but a Christian nation so it's known for its integrity and also for its capitalism, for its entrepreneurship. So handing over to you, from the business point of view, what should Britain be known for?
Well, I think that one of the things that certainly coming out of the EU, and this is admittedly a short-term challenge, which is that we have, as business people, been hampered by certain laws. I know that there has been constraints over manufacturing in terms of what you can and cannot do. We've seen everything from the limitations of how much power you can put into a vacuum cleaner, right the way through to what kind of chemical standards that you have to adhere to. And I say that not literally adhere, although I know that's in a chemical sense. But we are sometimes restrained by law, where if we had more ownership of our own laws and still meeting standards, still complying with international laws, but not to be restricted by EU. When you have to go through the situation of the shape of your bananas and goodness knows what, it just gets silly. What we're good at as a nation, and we've proven that we've done this, we can be inspirational, creative, and entrepreneurial. We have to encourage that. We don't encourage it. Some people will be listening today saying, yes, but we've got loads of schemes helping graduates through universities. But it's not enough. And then the other thing that I'm concerned about as well, which I have seen over the last 2 decades, is a watering down of our values in terms of, and here's one obvious thing. You mentioned about being a Christian nation.
Yes.
We are a nation that speaks English. And the point here is people might say, yeah, but we have to accommodate other languages. Of course, there's no problem. But if you cannot speak English and you cannot write it, and you cannot communicate, it is the foundation point to all that succeeds in business. It's whether we like it or not, we know that Britain, through its empire, made a difference by standardizing the way that people could communicate. And what I've seen, ironically, in many touch points, whether it's new people coming into industry, whether it's other areas of business, is that actually very few people seem to know how to use the language very well. And that affects law, that affects communications, that affects the ability to be able to liaise with other nations effectively, especially America. And I'm not just referring to America alone, but I mean, I'm just giving that as an example. Sure. The other values as well, which I find somewhat galling, is that we do now, and I know this has been a criticism of Britain, that we're a nation of shopkeepers, which of course Napoleon once said of us a few hundred years ago, which probably, was a bit of tongue-in-cheek. The bottom line is we as a nation have put too much focus on service-based industries. Yes. And I know why that through the Thatcher era onwards is that the deregulation of the financial industries at the time paved the way for short-term commercial growth. We saw that. But what we're not seeing now is that when you have troubled times, especially when, as we saw with the downturn in the economy from 2008 onwards, is that our manufacturing base was shattered. And we have to put more investment into those type of areas and put a better balance. Our GDP is not balanced enough. We are so reliant on the financial sector, and particularly London. It's not good enough. And more people are starting to see greater divides across the country. I know that many people will be saying, hold on, the nation has always had class-based system and certain areas of the south versus the north divide. But we're seeing it going even greater. I mean, there have been programs and researches that have focused on how London alone and the conurbations around London are almost becoming like islands within an island, in the sense that it's almost impossible for anyone to now, if you're outside of London, you've not already got a property that you've either inherited or that you've invested in. It's almost impossible to live in London. It's too expensive. But salaries are higher, I get that. And a lot of the concentrated jobs, so those particularly in the service sector, are in that area. We can't let that happen. So we've got to take ownership, get our own doorstep sorted out before we start looking elsewhere. And I would, and I know that this is controversial, change the policy on donations abroad. You can only be effective, and I know we've mentioned this before, you can only be effective to other nations if you yourself are in a strong position. We are getting weaker and weaker. Our infrastructure is crumbling, whether it's potholes on the roads, whether it's our infrastructure in NHS, whether it's education. We've got to do more to get our own act together. It's going to take time. I think it's going to take 10 years or more, but it's a worthwhile investment because there are generations that are coming through that will rely on it. And I think that what we've been doing is we've been thinking about too many short-term policies and not enough long-term policies. Coming out of the EU will help.
Yes. Coming out of the EU, it is the wise thing to do. It's funny. It's strange in that I can see the argument for staying in, but one of the biggest arguments against staying in is being subsumed into a bigger body. And so, from a Christian point of view, I can see our Christian identity being leached away. And for me, that's one of the big reasons to leave. I was I was reading through the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament, and there's this verse which stuck out to me. It says, it's Isaiah 41 verse 1. It says, "Listen to me in silence, O coastlands. Let the peoples renew their strength." Now, actually, this was a particular prophecy to the people surrounding the people of Israel at the time. But, the idea is let the people go and renew their strength. And he goes on to talk about coming to God for judgment, about the future. So, and I think so there is some application in that you need to be able to make your own judgment or let God judge you, not be told what to do by different nations. Otherwise, you can end up doing things that are wrong and that are not to your benefit. And in Britain's case, not to anyone's benefit, the way that Europe is being run at the moment, in that we see that it's one of the few shrinking markets, or at least it's growing a lot less than any other region in the world. I think that's definitely true to say. So we're better off being out. But the other side of it is community. And, we were just talking broadly about what should Britain aim for in the future. What is it? What should it be known for in the future? So we haven't touched on this, but one of the big harms of being part of the EU to Britain has been the decimation of some communities due to these policies, due to these laws. One being fishing communities.
Yes.
Well, if that's reversed, if we get back our fishing waters, fishing rights, that can be reversed. Not immediately. It might take a generation, before it gets back. And also farming communities.
Correct.
With the great subsidies over in Europe. So we can't really calculate the harm that's done because it's breaking up the whole fabric of society. Farming communities up and down the land, broken up, and then the fishing communities on the coast. So you've only got the cities left, and they've got their own issues. So if you over the years, and again we're saying long term, over the next generation or so, if we get back control of our waters and can trade, the farmers are going back to be able to trade fairly, then what we can find is, without having to fight against subsidies, you'll get those communities built up because the industries, the fishing and the agricultural industry were built up, which will give us a chance to be a better place to live. And I think that is the future for Britain. If we leave cleanly on WTO rules when we leave the European Union, the future for Britain could be one in which we once again build up the Christian consensus on how to behave, and we build up our communities where people know each other and have respect for each other, and people's livelihoods being returned. They are given their self-respect and purpose to individuals and to communities. That sounds good to me.
Yes, and the concept of Brand Britain, which I know probably many people are smiling at right now, sometimes seems to be somewhat shallow at the moment. It doesn't have a very good positioning, and ironically, even on our own shores, and that's something which is a worrying situation. I agree with you about the farming communities and also obviously the fishing communities. There are villages and towns that have been completely devastated, and that means that not only has that affected the whole landscape there, but it's cut off an employment source. And that's why I come back to, I agree with it, those are the areas that need to be invested in. And I think if we can build that back up, we should be proud that we should be buying British. Now, I think that for those listeners who might be of a certain age, there was a strong campaign during the 1960s to buy Britain, whether it buy British goods.
Yes,
now,
yes.
whether it was the eggs that you bought from your local farm store, or whether it was manufacturing of electrical goods, those are the sort of things where the Labour government of the day, this was Harold Wilson's vision of the white heat of industry. He had a vision, and this is what I was alluding to, that we may agree and disagree with what was going on at the time, and context is everything. But the point being was, he understood that we needed to have a purpose and a position as to why we were relevant to the world.
Yes, yes.
What we've lost over the decades is we've lost that sense of purpose, because I think we've tied ourselves too much to the issues of other nations, and it's the EU project that's dragged us down with it.
Yeah, and just finally, there's one other thing in the future, one other aspect of Britain being set free that could be positive for the future, and that is to be part of. Well, I suppose it's two things really: to be play a fuller part in the Commonwealth, so the ex-empire countries, and have the trading relations with them to be developed, including getting people into the country from there, because of the of people being able to come in and work from the EU.
Yes.
There were less people coming in from around the world, and
Yep.
more racially diverse, more culturally diverse people can be brought into the country from but with people with that link and love for the country because of the history of the Commonwealth. One side of it, and related is a group of countries which we might loosely call the Anglosphere. So they have come from Britain in that they all speak English. America, Australia, New Zealand. These countries have a common culture with us that I was talking about before. The legislature, ways operating in business, and so we can work with them a lot better. And they're all growing economies around the world. So. It being part of the Anglosphere, being part of the playing a fuller part in the Commonwealth, that positions us in the world. And in both of those places, culturally speaking, we're where English came from. We used to be head of this empire which morphed into the Commonwealth. Puts us in a great position to show leadership in the future.
Well, indeed. Well, listeners, what do you think? Do you agree with our comments? Do you have other subjects that you think that perhaps we should be considering on the show to discuss? Well, we would love you to log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts throughout the whole of 2019. Well, we know that Britain's future is currently uncertain. We would rather that it was more rule Britannia than rile Britannia. Let's hope that in the next few weeks and months to come that we can take control of our destination and move forward in a positive way. So thanks for listening, and join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.